Late Edo period, the first snow of early winter. The painter's name was Yukifune, already over 70 years old, living alone in a dilapidated townhouse in Honjo. There were no wife nor children in his house, only a painting desk and an unfinished painting on the wall, The Love of Three Dreams. In the painting, three figures stood apart from each other, yet seemed to gaze distantly at one another. Every day, the old painter would stare at those three silhouettes, as if gazing into his past 3 lifetimes. This was a story he heard from his father when he was young. His father had once been a servant of the Araki family, attending to a young samurai named Hatsunosuke. It was said that Hatsunosuke was strikingly handsome, with exceptional swordsmanship, yet his temperament was like a mountain spring calm to the point of solitude. General Araki Hanbai took him as his disciple. The elder was steady and experienced, while Hatsunosuke was like an unsheathed sword, its sharp edge just beginning to show. The two spent their days together, and on one unclear spring afternoon, with cherry blossoms blanketing the ground, Hanbai suddenly asked Hatsunosuke, "If one day I should die, would you be willing to die for me?" The young man did not answer. He simply gazed at a falling cherry blossom, resting in his palm, and softly said, "A general's life is my life." For the next 7 years, they were inseparable, until a political upheaval at court forced Hanbai to commit seppuku to preserve his honor, his white robes stained crimson with blood. Hatsunosuke quietly gathered his master's belongings and sat vigil at his grave for 3 days and nights. On the 4th day, he left behind a single sentence: "The falling of the cherry blossoms is my vow. My heart dies with them." And beneath the old cherry tree in the courtyard, he took his own life. His father said, on that day the wind was so fierce that cherry blossoms flew everywhere, as if their souls were forever entwined, lingering in the air. The second dream was one Yukifune lived himself. When he was 15, he had been sent to a secluded temple in Kyoto to train as a monk. At that time, his Dharma name was Byakuren. He had not yet changed his name. The temple's head monk, Master Gensho, was around 30 years old, his brows clear and his manner composed. When they first met, he was sweeping snow in the courtyard, his figure blending with the whiteness. He always spoke gently, often reciting the Lotus Sutra with Byakuren beneath the moon, and would secretly tuck a string of tangerines between the pages of a sutra as a sweet treat. Byakuren often found himself lost, staring at the master's back, unsure if his longing was love or devotion. One afternoon, as they sat beneath a plum tree in the temple, Gensho suddenly asked, "Have you ever wondered if the purity between hearts surpasses the love between man and woman?" Byakuren was stunned and lowered his head. "I dare not harbor such thoughts," he whispered. But from that day on, Byakuren often dreamed of a single white plum blossom blooming in his master's palm, dissolving into a wisp of white smoke. 3 years later, Byakuren was assigned to a remote mountain temple in Nara. On the eve of his departure, Gensho gave him a string of prayer beads, his fingertips trembling slightly. "The beads may be small, but my thoughts of you are boundless." Byakuren said nothing, turned and left, but his heart no longer held the Buddha, only the scent of plum blossoms. Years later, he renounced monkhood and became a painter, changing his name to Yukifune. Gensho secluded himself in the mountains, never taking another disciple for the rest of his life. The third dream was the story of a friend from Yukafune's later years. It was the floating world of Edo, a tale of fleeting beauty and transient love. A wealthy merchant named Ki fell in love with a young kabuki actor named Toji. Toji was just 17, his eyes like autumn water, his voice as sweet as song. On his debut, he captivated thousands. Ki bought him gold ornaments, commissioned special costumes, and even reserved entire rows at the theater. People mocked him for being foolishly in love in his old age, but he would simply say, "Money is nothing more than the shape of my heart." 3 years later, Toji became a star and naturally found a new lover, a young, naive painter. Ki was heartbroken, but did not blame him. Instead, he gave Toji one final gift, a portrait of his debut performance, with a poem inscribed, "Flowers bloom, flowers fall, hearts may change, but gold never falters." Years later, Toji fell into ruin, no longer able to perform. One day, he passed a painting shop and saw his youthful self on display. The signature on the painting read, "Yukafune." He stood there for a long time, but did not go inside. Yukafune sat before the painting, his memories like mist. He lifted his brush and added a touch of snow, a touch of cherry blossom, and a touch of plum. The three men had never met, yet they all lived within the same era, in different dreams. They had all loved, and all believed in a kind of silent affection, one that required no title nor destination. Love in that era was not a sin, yet it had nowhere to rest. It could only be painted into a dream. When the painting was finished, snow was falling outside the window. Yukafune whispered softly, "May we meet again in another life, not bound by gender, only by true hearts."